Joined by George Galloway, the leader of the Respect Party. The Chilcot report's been described by many as robust, even damning. Do you share that judgment?
Utterly damning, and the more damning because it came from the heart of the establishment, clubland. When it was appointed, I described it as a parade of establishment flunkies. Well, they didn't turn out to be flunkies, but they definitely were the establishment. So I think Chilcot has performed a national service, and in the nick of time. The British state was rocking after the Brexit, after the expenses scandal, after the war itself, its credibility at an all-time low. And I'd say give him a knighthood, but Tony Blair already gave him one. Sir John Chilcot has pulled some irons out of the fire for us. He's recovered some national honour. Although, as we've just been listening to, there are some, like those Japanese soldiers that used to be found on remote islands, coming out of a foxhole, still declaring their undying loyalty to the Emperor. There are such people still around, and one's just been on your show. But the settled will of the people is that Chilcot was right, and with all the august language and demeanour that he displayed yesterday, it seems to me utterly damning and no road back.
Do you accept, therefore, that Chilcot does not show and does not claim that Tony Blair lied?
Well, you can only know what is in someone's heart and mind if you're the Almighty. The fact is, whether he was a fool or a knave, the end result was the same. And I think that it has opened up now, and I'm sure that as we speak there are lawyers working on it, opened up the day, as Joshua Rosenberg, the respected legal correspondent, wrote in The Guardian this morning, opens up the door for Mr. Blair having to appear in court.
Well, what would be the basis of that? Since, again, Chilcot does not opine on the issue of whether this was an illegal war. And perhaps does not provide evidence that it was a legal war either. What would be the legal basis of the war criminal charge?
Misconduct. I don't think it would be war criminal.
You don't?
No, it would be misconduct in public office. There's plenty in Chilcot to demonstrate that the use of his prime ministerial powers was sufficiently reckless and negligent as to establish a case of misuse, misconduct in public office. And I'm sure that the wives and mothers and fathers, children even, of those who fell in the British forces are examining and exploring these very legal avenues right now.
So just to be clear, you think the war criminal route, which many on the left have talked about, you think that is pretty much foreclosed, but misconduct in public office could still be a legal route to pursue?
That's right. The ICC doesn't have the power to punish aggressive war, even unlawful war, though I've asked the Pope to punish it today because it's established in Chilcot that Mr. Blair waged what we call unjust war. Catholic teaching is very clear from St. Thomas Aquinas on this, unjust war where all other options have not been explored.
You're bringing the Pope into this?
Yes, I think Catholics all over the world deserve the Holy Father to opine on this. But that's perhaps a rarefied issue only for Catholics. But the ICC cannot, because its statutes don't allow it to prosecute war.
It doesn't even define what an aggressive war would be. What do you make of the instinct war, not the war criminal route, though many would still like that. Many will never be happy until he is. They're the insatiables on this issue. What do you make of the misconduct in public office?
Well, I think that if proceeding on the basis of only partial evidence, not giving the electorate or the media the whole story, amounted to misconduct in public office, there's hardly a Prime Minister that wouldn't be guilty of misconduct in private office.
What would you say to
public office?
Public office.
Well, of course, not with the same scale of cost. I mean, Ben Bradshaw's statement and Mr. Blair's statement that the world is safer because of what he did doesn't even pass the straight-face test, never mind any legal test. The world is in flames. Fanatic extremism cascading everywhere, exploding everywhere, even in our own streets. And Iraq is in pieces, Syria is in pieces, Libya is in pieces, the Yemen's in pieces, Saudi Arabia may soon be in pieces. The idea that the world is safer now because of these two jokers behind you, Mr. Bush and Mr. Blair, is so utterly ridiculous. So the costs of this misconduct are far greater than getting the marginal rate of income tax wrong or the DVLA regulations.
What, though, are the foreign policy implications? Because let me put a point I put to someone else yesterday. We intervened in Iraq and we occupied Iraq. It's a mess. We intervened in Libya, but we didn't occupy Libya. It's a mess. We didn't intervene in Syria and we didn't occupy Syria. It's a mess. What are the foreign policy implications?
They were afraid to repeat the Iraq experience, as would have happened if they had occupied Libya. The people being slaughtered there now would be our sons, as well as the Libyans who are in fact being slaughtered. Ditto with Syria. To praise Syria in aid of the war in Iraq is so flying in the face of the reality. It almost leaves one speechless. Al-Qaeda in Iraq was a response to the invasion of Iraq. Al-Qaeda in Iraq moved into Syria and became ISIS, metamorphosed into something even worse.
You ask what are the foreign policy implications of that trilogy you've just given us. I think they are that containment is often a better way of dealing with dangers in the world than trying to zap in and destroy and remove people.
Well, of course, in the memo that was in the whatever memo, he does say we could go for containment.
Yes.
In that, and then dismisses
Incidentally,
it.
the next word is not but, as Ben Bradshaw
No.
just wrongly stated on your programme. There is no but. There are a series of caveats, as you rightly
But not to
described
whatever.
them, but not to the word whatever, and it isn't but.
So where does Western foreign policy go from here in the Middle
It's
East?
in a dreadful mess. The policy options that we pursued, Matthew quoting Talleyrand, I did it frequently at the time, worse than a crime, a blunder. It's very hard to see how we put these pieces back together. One thing ought to be a lesson, that supporting dictators like Saudi Arabia, like Iraq before it, because the Iran war that was again prayed in aid was fought with our weapons, and our taxpayers gave export credit guarantees.
British weapons?
Yes, British
What
weapons.
British weapons?
British weapons, German weapons,
what
American
British
weapons.
weapons?
Well, remember the super gun? Remember the
Yeah,
Scott
but that was never used. That
inquiry?
was a joke. That was a
Well,
con.
Perhaps so, but
what British weapons were
companies,
used?
British companies, British arms companies were heavily involved in supplying Saddam Hussein.
With what weapons, George?
Well, I don't know which particular caliber of gun, but there were definitely...
Because when I was in
involved.
Iraq, all the weapons were Soviet.
Yes, of course, the Soviet Union supplied a lot of Iraq.
I'm not aware that we supplied any
but the West,
actual weapons.
The West supported Iraq in the Iran-Iraq
Indeed.
war, and indeed denied Halabja, which is also now prayed in aid. They denied the Halabja. They blamed Iran for Halabja for 6 full months after it. So, you know, the moral authority of these people is now gone. A period of ashamed silence from them would now be in order.
All right. George Galloway, thank you for being with us.